And there we go.
Yeah,
All
thanks for
right.
reminding me. So, warm welcome to this small group of complex citation enthusiasts. We miss a bit Shelley here to make this real enthusiastic welcome. So, from my side, it's more a working welcome. So we have done a couple of things through the last month since the last session at IDW, and this is what we want to present to you. And at the end, please stay with us. We will make a couple of announcements what we want to do in the future and where we would seek for new participants. Um, I was asked to share the slides, so let me do that. Do you see any blocks where you can't see anything because I have the meeting chat in the foreground? If there is a square, I will close them.
It looks fine to us. Thank you, Martina.
Okay, then it's more convenient. So the first request is please sign up in the collaborative notes. You find it in Wova or on the slides so that we know who was joining. This is our short agenda before I hand over to Graham, who will do the first part. It's just the welcome and um, giving you an overview. So we will give a short recap what complex citation is, introduce the 10 recommendations, and then introduce the name change, give give a bit of a backup on or well, a last update on the different teams, and then have the closing remarks in the end. And I think with that, I would hand over to Graham.
Okay. Thank you, Martina. So yeah, let's sort of start off, by sort of framing the bigger picture. And obviously, we know from Open Science has kind of two kind of needs that we're trying to meet here. One is about kind of credit, and the other one's about reproducibility. We've got a couple of quotations there. So the idea is that we know there's problems inside the research data sphere about kind of making sure that credit's getting through to the people who are actually producing sort of research outputs. And there's also a question about kind of how reproducible those sort of findings are. So you can sort of see the quote there, more than 70% of researchers have tried and failed to reproduce another scientist's experiments, which is quite worrying. So what are we trying to do with the complex citations? And I think it's trying to look at these sort of challenges and how we sort of approach them. First one is, we're trying to enable credit to really kind of get down to the data software and the people are sort of really producing the inputs to the outputs that we see in the literature. And to do that, we're enabling citation of multiple outputs, which are underpinning the scientific results, and addressing some of the technical issues which we are seeing in the publication sphere, where there are limits on how many citations you can have. And through this, we're going to be sort of building the trust in the science through transparency and underpinning the data and the other scientific outputs and how they are connected together. So next slide, please, Martina. So yeah, we asked the sort of question as you sort of joined, what is complex citation? We got some answers. And so just to kind of quickly recap, a complex citation is a citation that provides traceability, transparency, and credit to multiple components. It's what I would sort of describe as a wedge in the citations on the output, where there's not usually enough space to then a richer corpus of information as well. And to do that, we're linking through to what we call complex citation objects, which is a means to provide credit to those digital objects, the cores, the facilities, the instruments, the repositories that contributed to the research described in the paper, which in a cross-disciplinary, cross-research sort of approach, it's inclusive of all different types of PIDs out there, but also allows kind of the brittle identifiers URL. So it's adaptive. It can be able to kind of cope with the reality of what we're dealing with in the world. And it includes every type of digital object used and their contributions and the contributors to the citing material. And it includes also what I call the secret sauce here, which is the relationships between those constituent parts of the complex citation object, which we call the linked digital objects, or the LDOs. So next slide, please, Martina. So we've been working on this for a number of years now, and the previous RDA group is the Complex Citations Working Group. We came up with a series of recommendations of what a complex citation object would be, how it'd be structured, what it'd look like. And just a quick summary of those. So the key requirements that the CCOs capture enough detail to ensure proper credit, traceability, and transparency of cited material, and support machine actionable attribution for each referenced object. The CCOs themselves do not accrue credit, but simply list the data and digital identifiers that require citation tracking. So that's the kind of making sure the credit gets to where credit's due. The CCOs are stable and identifiable, versioned, resolvable, and persistent. So they're managed really well in themselves. The CCOs use standard structures, are limited to 2 PID graph levels. That's to avoid issues around indexing, with a strong preference to utilize persistent identifiers. But as mentioned earlier on, we can also cope with other type of links as well. And CCOs should remain open, accessible, and flexible for various use cases with an open license and sufficient metadata. So they're curated well and accessible to those people who need to then handle the content. However, we also know from the conversations that we've been having with you, the community, that the name complex citation object, or CCO, needs some tweaking, some adjusting, because it's off-putting, it's acting as a bit of a barrier for our conversations. And so we want to avoid the confusion with things like Creative Commons CCO licenses, and to prevent perceptions of complexity, which is implied by the word complex. So one of the things we'll be doing alongside listening to the session, the next slide, please, Martina, is asking you to also vote on some possible alternate names. So we're going to show you 8 possible names, some pros and some cons for each of those. And just to have those in your mind as you kind of listen to the rest of the presentations and the discussions as well, and fill that in, and we can look at the results at the end of the session. So I won't go through all the pros and cons. Hopefully you can read them on the screen. But the ones we have are Mosaic, it's a modular or modern object for scholarly attribution and integrated citation. Trace, which is transparent research artifact citation entity. Marco, multiple aggregated research citation object. And Echo, enriched or enhanced citation handling object. Next slide, please, Martina. And the other 4 options are Core, a citation object registry. RCO or RICO, research citation objects. CDOI, which is a composite or compound DOI, and then CCI, citation container identifier. So kind of keep those sort of names, those sort of concepts in your mind as you kind of listen to the rest of the presentation, and obviously do vote as well, please. The next slide, please, Martina. And that's it from me. Handing over to Martina. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Graham, for making this start and giving us a bit of background on what we are doing. So we will now come to the updates from the 2 task teams that we have, the technical task team, so which I'm leading, and we'll make the start, and then James will continue with the implementation task team. So just as a recap, what we are dealing with in this group is to enable the CCO publication and usage from standardization to pilot implementation. So it's really focusing on the technical needs to support the complex citation. So you will see that there are a little bit of overlaps between the groups. So we have a close collaboration and meet between the chairs to ensure that we are moving in the same direction, and we have a short recap what was discussed in the other group at each of our sessions. So the tasks are the specification of a CCO, and I have to say we have not finalized the definition of the metadata standard. We were just moving a bit forward and backward, which I will show in a minute. We want afterwards to establish pilots for generating and hosting the CCO. So really moving towards using our standards in technical developments, and then develop tools. And one example is the validator, but also tools and, of course, guides how to use the tools. We have decided that we want to use DOIs. That had several reasons. One was that the publishing community really wants to have DOIs for every reference, and we reached out to DataCite, and they agreed that it is our partner for the CCO publication. So we will publish DataCite DOIs for CCOs. And the other guiding principle is that we don't want to break established systems, so it has to fit into DataCite's metadata and into their services. And we also want to make it easy but flexible. So it should be easy to mint these CCO DOIs, but on the other hand, it needs to have the flexibility to support all our use cases, and that is really getting to the point that we are always looking for use cases to ensure that the needs of the whole community are met. The updates will have two parts, the hackathons and the stakeholder engagement. But first, I want to introduce the last use case we got, and which we are working on at Santander at the moment. So that's why I am in a hotel room at the moment. And that's the interactive atlas of the IPCC. So it's a different part of the IPCC work. The interactive atlas is a flexible way to the results underpinning the IPCC. So it is really a part of the report, and provides some basic statistics on the data which is provided. I'm just seeing the chat, which is provided through the atlas. They have established a really great part of the transparency already. So they have implemented a very detailed provenance information. And the idea is to have also the complex citation in that. And we focus not on what the users download, but on the core data which the team has to prepare. So the atlas provides scientific data which is based on two large projects for the climate projections, future projections. One is CMIP, the global part, and Cortex is the regional part. And what you need to do for model results is you have to do a mean across several of them. And that's what is described in the provenance and where we want to add the credit piece in the atlas. I have given you some sources. There's a documentation. It's number 24 of our use case list. You can access the atlas, and yeah. And we are always looking for new use cases. So that was more the fun stuff, which is, I think, a new use case, which is a bit outside of the usual use case where we cite the data and software samples in papers. And this metadata standard is largely led by Lou Darroch and Jonathan Blythe, for which I'm very grateful because I'm not the metadata expert. We have had two hackathons. For the first, it was the idea to see if the first draft could support all the use cases. And the first draft was based on the standard OAI ORE. And one outcome was that we should step back and investigate other metadata standards, because every metadata standard has a specific purpose, and no metadata standard has the purpose to describe CCOs. So we want to look into different schemas and get out the pieces that are relevant to describe CCOs. So we played around with DCAT. There was an example added, and of course we have schema.org as another standard that we look into. And at the moment, we have these different templates and are in the process to, what you can say is a merging process to really derive the first version of the metadata standard out of it. The step afterwards will be that we contact those metadata experts which develop these different schemas, and then we will reach out to you as a community to see if this is what is needed by you and your use cases. And then we have to deal with how do we map that to a DataCite template. So as we are leaving this DataCite standard here, which was a recommendation and outcome of the last session at IDW, that we should not look too much into DataCite, but describe what we have with the best standard that is available. Another outcome, which was more this out of the second hackathon, was that we can start and have to start with tool development and implementation, because we will not have the final metadata version. There will be a bit of forth and back when we implement it and test the standard, test our whole system. So we envision that this will be an iterative approach, needing the whole community. And just to say, we have the collaborative notes, and if there's any feedback, we have a section there, so you are welcome to give some feedback on that. I don't really want to discuss this intermediate result, but please give us some, be a bit patient before we reach out with something more solid. The second part is that we need to include the community. So we had a meeting between the co-chairs of the interest group and DataCite Executive Director, Matt Bias. And it was really emphasized that we need this iterative approach. DataCite is supportive, but needs to follow their own regulations. So what we came up with as first agreement was that we will describe a bit better what we envision. So who has which role, what do we need to bring together? So this is connected to user stories and to visualize them to make it easier to discuss what we are aiming at. And that's really something which is on the side of the CCI. And DataCite was volunteering to use our already published proof of concept CCOs that we did for the IPCC, or rather, which I published through Zenodo for the IPCC example, and discuss with the technicians to estimate the effort that they need for adjusting their running surfaces. So we will, of course, stay in touch. We will hand over the discussion, I think, to the adoption task team, which will coordinate that. Of course, they need to integrate the technical task group from time to time, as there are overlaps, as I have mentioned. And of course, we will continue to the exchange with DataCite in the future. And the first version of this vision, which was created, is something I want to discuss here, and maybe we can have a short discussion on that. I think James will give a timing for us here. So what we figured out from all the different discussions we had is that we have more or less three groups of different actors, I would say. One is really the core CCO infrastructure and I would say the partners which are necessary to maintain and develop that. So on the one hand, we have the CCO publishers, which are repositories. We have DataCite as registration agency. And if we think about the different pieces of software and services that we need to develop, the idea is to have a kind of governance where different partners like the CCO publishers, DataCite can contribute, but where there is a short board which is defining what is part of the standard and is doing the versioning, so that we have some kind of community governance on the CCO. The different pieces that we envision is one, the metadata standard, then a kind of generator, so a tool which generates the metadata standard. We have talked about an evaluator, which could be part of the generator, but should be a standalone tool so that anyone can validate that this is a valid CCO. And the enricher is something, it's my wording. At some point, if we want to assign credit, we need to get the metadata out of the LDOs, the linked digital objects, into the whole metadata. Otherwise, we need this two-step process, so that needs to be this metadata enrichment. Yeah, thanks, Graham. So the second group of, before I go to the second group of users, so the role of the publishers is really to publish the CCOs to DataCite, to maintain the CCOs and the metadata. And we think that every publisher will have their own profile of the metadata because it's very flexible, and we envision that publishers will have different profiles of the metadata. And DataCite is for me the primary source of every service. So they run the latest version of the generator, not of the generator, but of the evaluator, of the enricher. So if you want to have any CCO service which is reliable, then you should access DataCite, even if there are other instances running at other partners. We haven't discussed that yet, but I think that would be important to have this primary CCO service provider. The primary users are really those who cite the CCO, so paper publishers, but any kind of other digital product publishers. We have seen the example from the Interactive Atlas, and we envision that they will reference the CCO, but also run the evaluator. And it would be good if they run the evaluator maybe through an API that is running at DataCite to have the latest version of it. Yeah, and the last group is those who need these references to assign credit, so the indexer. So that's why these became secondary uses. There might be AI knowledge graphs which use these references, these connections, these linkages between paper and CCO or data and CCO. And that is what I wanted to present, and I would open up if we have the time for a discussion at this point.
Yeah, we're ahead of schedule, so you have to fit up to 15 if people want to ask questions now.
I don't have a time with me here, so how much time is it?
It's 5 to 2.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're well ahead of schedule. So if people have, there are a few questions in the chat, Martina. Is it Carlos Wolf as how is this CCO object interact with Scolex? And I think the implementation might touch on this, so maybe holding off on that question. And then Stephen Richard has asked about the template or draft metadata schemes available to look at anywhere. Can you point to the link of where the latest are?
Um, as we are in the process of really merging it into the first version, I would not open the templates up, but would encourage to look at the mirror board, which is, I think, should be linked somewhere. As how do I go back? Here.
Left.
Yeah. I have. I have an icon in front of that. That's a bit annoying. This one? No, the next, maybe. Yeah,
Alex,
there is
put
a
it in.
mirror board link, and I think a mirror board is really good to have a note somewhere and ask questions or make a comment at a specific place. So I would invite to go there. And I hope that we can post the link to the slides so that this link gets accessible. So that would be my suggestion if you want to engage at this point, or you leave a comment in the yeah, you can't leave a comment in the notes because you don't have the template, but here is a bit more content on how the different standards are checked against use cases. Maybe Wolf can just speak up. We are not so many. If you can unmute and
Yes.
just.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. No, I have several questions. Really interesting about. I'm really interested about your work, which is really interesting. But I was concerned about the coordination with other initiatives, which makes close activities. A first question is about versioning, because I saw in the agenda there is tonight, later today, a session about data versioning. It's the session. What is the session name? Let me check it. It's practical data versioning recommendation, update, and final community sign off. So my question was if the versioning of the CCO object is somehow related to the work of this group, be because for me there are several ways for needing a new version, because what you contain as a citation may evolve over time, so you have to make several steps of what you are citing, or because you are adding new things. So how do you say I'm a new version because my context has changed, but the list is fixed, or I'm a new version because my list is extended and the pointed objects are always the same?
I think the question of versioning is more related to the other task team. I don't know if James wants to
Yeah,
speak about that or answer that here.
I think with the CCO is basically a signpost to represent the science done at that point in time. So if you want to cite for your, say, the work that you've done on that piece of work, the collate a package of research objects, artifacts, and say this is what we've done for the research, and that you're putting that in there. Now, fundamentally, that they could change with time. But what we're trying to do is saying that that is a stat, that is what you've done for your research. Now, with the complexity of growing DOIs and things, there are other things around that. But this is from a first point of consideration of let's just point to what you've used and say and get to the credit underneath. Because at the moment, if you create you can't cite more than one DOI. So you can't get to, or some places have a limitation on citation, not more than one, have a limitation, so you can't get to all the different pieces. So we're packaging it all that up, but it's also the bits underneath and where the credit actually lies for the work done. In terms of versioning, the CCO can, we're saying, could adhere to the DataCite versioning principles. So the objects inside would never change, but you might create a new object that relates to that, and that's a different sort of concept. I don't know if that's
And
answered.
yeah, what's the difference between recommendation or recommending to to assign a new or create a new CCO versus having a new version of a CCO? Have we spoken about that? Is there a recommendation when?
We have, and it's probably going to align with the publishers. Uh, in essence, if you publish a piece of work and then in review process or something, you then create another piece of work, you might say, oh, well, the data have changed. Therefore, we want to better represent it, and therefore you'll have a new one. It'll adhere to the DOI, the DataCite guidelines on that, but you wouldn't just have a sort of a concept DOI on it because you shouldn't reference a complex citation within a complex citation because that affects the indexing and things like that. So we have discussed those sorts of elements. And growing DOIs, it's a timestamp. You want the timestamp of date access because you're never going to actually get to the data are always going to evolve. So you want to know when you actually access those data.
Yeah, the final remark on the different groups. So I'm following the versioning group. I'm actually the tab liaison, and I joined these groups regularly, so we are aware of their recommendations, and we also know that in the ESIP group, or what is it, Earth and Space Information Partners, they are also doing a lot of recommendations on how to cite, how to version. So we are in contact with these groups.
Okay, another group maybe which could be interesting to reach out with is the FairDO initiative. I don't know if you're aware of it. It was started with the RDA Data Fabric Interest Group, and it's a set of digital object representations with commons, profiles, and interoperability layers. They defined the norm, and from what I saw, I'm pretty sure CCO may fit into their framework. CCO could be a fair digital object.
I followed the group at the start because there was a lot of energy and engagement of the different partners. What I understood that they have different layers to enable machine accessible data sets. So it's a bit also going into enabling cross domain interactive analysis of data. I think that any kind of DOI which has a PID and metadata could fit into their concept because you have the describing metadata layer and then the real data. Yeah, we know of the group. We also know that there are other similar metadata. Yeah, I would just say collection approaches. So don't rely too much on that phrase. So we have the rate, which is specifically bringing the different parts of a project together, the data. I think also the publications, the software. So it's really a specific purpose why you group these different identifiers, and we are aware of it, but we also have our very specific purpose to support traceability or provenance and to assign the credit to a large number of different data sets, software, samples, where Graham introduced the current limitations that we want to overcome with a simple approach, which we expect will be changed over time and will have different versions. But to make a start with something which is supported by the publishers, we start with this simple approach and also one layer approach. I think that was not introduced by Graham, so it became clear that we can't have very complicated structures. So we have a data set from which only part was used, or where the credit has to be assigned to the object which contains this PID. So it's not possible to have a two-step procedure, but it has to be really one reference directly in the CCO where the credit needs to be assigned. So there might be some more complicated approaches in the future, but we wanted to start with something simple and supported by the stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much.
Uwe, I know you had your hand up earlier. I don't know if you wanted to. You might have gone now. I was just double checking you didn't have a burning desire to. You're muted.
He's on the telephone at the moment.
Oh,
Multitasking.
okay.
He will come back if he has time after his call.
Martina, you have to continue driving, and I'll start my.
Yeah. So there was not so much discussion on the structure, but if there are some comments, questions coming up, use the collaborative notes section for it, because this is the first approach and it is good to get feedback on it. And with
And the
that, I
Miro
hand
is
over
the-
to the other team,
Thank you,
James.
Martina. And the Miro for that is the first link that Alex kindly provided ahead of myself. So thank you for both those links, Alex. The implementation task team. So we were tasked with developing guidance for creating a complex citation object and citing in the scholarly publication. Develop an approach for scholarly publication to support in-text citation of the linked digital objects. Provide guidance on the use of complex citation objects in publications in the publication process, including inline references, flags, and the reference list. The other task was implementation for scholarly infrastructure to enable automated attribution and credit. So develop implementation materials specific to the publishing workflow actors that we identified in the working group and the recommendations. Determine which scholarly infrastructure workflow actors are essential for a CCO to be functional to prioritize the work. For example, DataCite, Crossref, and the indexes. Collaborate to promote adoption with workflow actors and existing infrastructure. And determine the exact workflow actors that will unpack the complex citation object for automated attribution and credit. Next slide, please. So in the initial workflow actors recommendations, we had a set of sort of workflow actors, and then Martina's got her lovely diagram above, which were previously that we're trying to get that we would love to get feedback on. So this was trying to break it down a bit further and sort of the workflow. So we had a look at the workflows and we said, well, fundamentally you need a researcher. They go and collect and generate data, and they want to know what they should be doing. Should they create a complex citation object? Should they create a standard DOI for all their data? Should they have a data paper? So we started collating that information and giving some guidance around the implementation for a researcher, what they might be doing. And within that, if they were to create a complex citation object, Martina's already alluded that we've come up with this concept that you would have a complex citation object generator. So this is some sort of software tool packaging service that you can put all your research objects in, artifacts in, and generate a complex citation object. This is not too different to how researchers collate their papers to then put into the reference section in a simplified form. And then we came up with the fact that this needs some sort of validation, that you are putting the right things in, that the PIDs you're putting in are PIDs that they validate. Now, because we accept that there is a brittleness, Graham alluded earlier to a brittleness to you could have a URL that it might not validate everything, but it would depend on the service and the requirements. So there would be this idea of a complex citation object validator, and this comes more important for the later processes as well. And then once someone's got all their artifacts and objects, and they're trying to create this publication, they have to go through the publication process. So there's a scholarly artifact publication. So this is the complex citation object. Then you have the literature, and in the literature publication, you have to write the paper. And then you have the journal requirements, the formatting, what you need to do. You have the reviewer roles, you have inline citation, and you have indexes, sort of at the end of the publication process, and sort of secondary users as well. And then you have the secondary users, so the researcher profile. So you want to, having done all this work, you want to actually have it filter back into your role and the impact you're having. So you want to bring this back to the research profiles, knowledge graphs, and this feeds into the impact and credit that researchers are looking to get to promote their work. Next slide, please, Martina. So as I said, we're looking at the sort of author, what they needed to do. So can a journal support referencing of all objects that should be referenced? If they can, then do you actually need a complex citation object if they're actually doing that work anyway as part of their referencing? Not all journals can do this. So if they don't, have you undertaken specific efforts that augment your selection of citable items not covered in the corpus of your paper? If you haven't, then you should create a complex citation object listing only those linked digital objects necessary and sufficient to your paper, so you don't go overwhelming the reviewers in the journal, and making sure that it's relevant to the research that you're doing. And these objects will receive due credit. If you had done effort, so create a citable object detailing your efforts, so a review paper, a collection, a data paper. So fundamentally, this is where you might have a complex citation object for this additional effort that you've created, so that you can get the credit. One thing that's important to note is we don't believe that the complex citation object in and of itself will get credit. So you can't just go and gamify the citation credit process by just creating lots of complex citation objects and just bundling things up or repeatedly bundling things up. This should be done in a review paper collection, a data paper, and that sort of thing, a data product. Next slide, please, Martina. So following that, I've already mentioned about the generator. So the tool or software that will be able to collate content for a complex citation object. It should accept and contain relationships between identifiers associated with the research. Does not have to do the registration of a complex citation object DOI in and of itself. It might just create the package that you can then provide somewhere that then puts the DOI service on for you. A validator, a tool or software that is able to support validation of the content. I sort of alluded to this earlier. So check the DOI is valid, check the linked digital objects in the CCO are valid, and check the behavior exists. Now, I've already mentioned that it might not always be able to do that, but it might then highlight the ones that need a bit more investigation. Next slide, please, Martina. And then we were looking at the journal publication manuscript review process. So there should be author guidelines around when a complex citation object, so the actual implementation of the whole complex citation object workflow, the journal should be a part of this. Now, we don't want to create a lot of effort, work, time, resource for the journals and the reviewers and the authors. So with the author guidelines, it should say whether or not a CCO is required. Do you have to do all that work there, or where do you put the work in? Do you state that you should also state that there is a complex citation object in the availability statement and making more appropriate use of the availability statements and where the data are used. And providing guidance on in-text citation and the fact that it should cover all data in the CCO. So you're not just doing a subset of the data in the complex citation object. This also allows for subsetting of larger data sets potentially. If you have PIDs underneath a DOI in and of itself, you can actually explicitly state the PIDs that you've used. You can check the complex journal staff should have some guidelines, so they should check a CCO is published and accessible for the reviewer. They should check the authors provided an adequate availability statement, and they should check the complex citation object validation occurred at the time of publication. And that should help both the journaler and the reviewer. And then the manuscript review. A reviewer should have access to a CCO validator. This allows them to have some sort of check and confidence in the complex citation object. Reviewers should check the availability statements, that the data are mentioned there and the data are appropriate for the article in and of itself. And potentially either the journal or the reviewer can request that there might be a new CCO because data are missing, incorrect, something not quite right. And that would potentially lead to a new complex citation object that is part of the process, considering it is likely to already have been DOI'd. Next slide, please. I realized when Martina was going through her diagram, I was going to put the diagram again here for Martina because it allowed that we have, once you've gone through the journal review process, there's a series of elements. So Martina, can you go back to the image you have where you have the indexes and you have the registration users? I think it's slide 10. No, yeah, 10. One, yeah, this one. So within this, you have the publishers and you have the registration agency. And the registration agency is in the process by which the complex citation object actually gets picked up. So once you have, so Shelley, please jump in if I say anything incorrect. I always get this a bit muddled in my head. Once you have put your complex citation object in the reference section, a lot of journals use third-party providers, some do it themselves, and they will register and index that with Crossref. And once that gets picked up, DataCite have said to us that they would then acknowledge that the CCO is picked up and be able to say all the linked digital objects in the CCO can then sort of be pulled out, and that's where the credit can then flow, and that should be supported. And that might help answer the Scholix question earlier as well, because it then feeds the graph. At the moment, a lot of repositories are feeding the graph themselves, but they don't know if something has been cited or it just hasn't been cited. So this allows a bit more automation and efficiency in the whole process. And what you can, Shelley, you jump in.
No, I just validating, James, that what you're saying is absolutely the way it works. And it highlights, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we hit the adoption task team. But what James is highlighting is that journals and publishers are by and large not actually making their data citations machine actionable. So by this project, we are putting a big old spotlight on that. And because so many repositories have taken it upon themselves to create those links in order to demonstrate value and that the data that they manage is making it into technical reports and peer-reviewed publication and, national decision-making efforts. It's really we really need to push back on the journals and publishers that they need to actually do their due diligence to make those links machine actionable. So it is, we're hitting that, we're double doubting on that problem, not just from a regular data citation, but now for this complex citation. So yes, and I believe DataCite is going to create all of the links necessary for Scholix, but we do have some more work to do with them, quite a bit of work yet to do with DataCite. Back to you, James.
Thank you. Well, I think this is where this highlights the core infrastructure there that is in that image around the CCO services and where people can pull up, and then you could build those profiles, and you could build those profiles on an institution basis, on a service level basis, and getting some of those big players to play a part and help with that as well. And this is where, with the implementation, the document is sort of stable now. We're getting some feedback from the journals and the indexers to sort of formalize it a bit more, make sure it's a bit more robust. But we'll look to share that out. And this is it's also awaiting some feedback from the metadata group on how some of the implementation should work around the structure of the complex citation object. But we're now in a phase where we're going to be going into the adoption group who are going to start spinning up off of the back of the implementation and getting the people who are going to be adopting this, the journals and the indexes, and getting some people to buy in and providing some pilots and adoptions of the complex citation objects, and continuing to work with DataCite because we have requested that there's a general type change, but we're going to use their existing infrastructure as is for now, to make sure that it works so that they don't end up shooting themselves in the foot. And we can take that forward with them as well. So I think we're now on to yeah, my next slide. Next slide. Next slide. I stole this slide that I created. One back. Yeah. So I stole this slide saying what it means to everyone. So you have authors, you have users, you have organizations, potentially software, AI, literature, policy, funders, impact, transparency, traceability, and integrity. That's what this sort of means around complex citation. And this now on to adoption with Shelley. Thank you, Martina.
Does anyone have any questions for James before we go on to the adoption task team? I'm so glad you're all going to be working with well, the good news, James has gotten that major implementation document ready to go. Your feedback on that will be really important. And as we are moving from implementation to adoption, still work happening in the technical team. The adoption folks are going to start their meetings, taking over the implementation task team meetings every other Monday. So our first one will be the 30th of March. So I really hope everybody can join us. James is also going to help with this, which I'm delighted because it just means things will actually get done. There's a number of coordinated discussions to have. This project has been going on a number of years, and we've had early discussions with indexers and a variety of publishers. We've had quite a number of conversations with DataCite, a little bit with Crossref. So we will reprise all of those and share the implementation guidance and start to talk about what it means to actually put that all into place. And the pilots that we're going to be working on, trying to find friendly indexers, friendly publishers. Thanks to DataCite, with their intent to actually add in those publishing relationships whenever a CCO comes through on a paper, though that linkage will be in their metadata that is the intent. It might take a few rounds for us to get to a really smooth process with them because whenever they implement something new, they usually they do it in a few phases just to make sure that all the users are getting the most out of the addition. If you've ever helped with the DataCite work that, anything large, any organization used by everybody in the world, it's important to do that with intent and measured steps. And we're very grateful for that. Yeah, if you want to nominate a publisher to implement, please let us know especially if you're an editor there or have a lead role there, that would be really fantastic. We're hoping that the lift for publishers is actually very low. The doing it this way by using an entity, a single citation in a paper is meant to offload the work from the publisher, so they're not having to cite hundreds and thousands of digital objects that are supporting the research. They've just watching Uwe have a call. Uwe, if you only knew, buddy. Uh, we just know they're not that great with data citation. So getting them to do something where it's hundreds of or thousands is not realistic. But by using this entity, we're actually going to solve a whole bunch of other issues having to do with credit. So yes to software, yes to physical samples, yes to instrumentation, yes to facilities, yes to assay numbers, or I'm not saying that right. The assay numbers. Yes, thank you. Oh, there goes Linda. And there's a number of uh, especially repositories that want to demonstrate their value. And the only way to do that is if all of the machine actionable information is working. And we're just not there yet. We're just not there yet on our infrastructure. So you could actually cite the repository if either through their through their ROR, let's say through their ROR, because we want to pick the right PID. You can cite anything that has a persistent identifier. And actually, James, do you mind coming back to highlight it? You probably talked about it earlier, but just it's worth saying the relationship elements that the complex citation object are going to have so that you can understand how those digital objects are actually related to the work that they describe is like a game changer. That we think this is going to be what we've needed for a long time.
Yeah, I think it reduces duplication, mutation of data sets, and all the headaches that you get with that storage and the traceability and transparency of the science. And a key thing is the credit because people only want to share their data if they can show that it's doing something. So having those relationships is where the structure comes in, and how you actually tag that up. So this is why the metadata group have had a couple sprints, and they're looking at it in they're far more technical than my meager capabilities and capacity to handle that. It is. And they've had a look. I think schema.org because it's such a sort of broad, well used terminologies and understanding, and then ORE, Jonathan, who's doing a lot of work on this, thinks it has a good use case in ontology for this sort of thing. So yeah, it's gonna really allow the underpinning data that are used to be reused and to get the credit that they deserve without doubling, tripling storage sizes, and actually having the robust science. I think Graham mentioned at the start around the number of people that can't actually reproduce the science. Now, if the data are subtly changing because the format has subtly changed, now if you can say we use this software to change it and this is where the data were, you've got it hands down, and you at a fraction of the cost, especially when you're talking climate scale data sets and cross domain and all that sort of stuff. So it should really help on a number of factors on that.
Yeah. And adding a little bit, rolling back to the conversation that Linda and I had about software and mapping. So the LDOs, the linked digital objects, those are just citation elements. Just the very, very simple. So citing software, citing using however somebody would cite coming out of a GitHub repository, using code meta, getting a persistent identifier, that should just dovetail right in there very nicely. So good to double check that, good to make sure that we're in good communication with the code meta folks, but also just knowing that it doesn't matter what the style guide is for the journal. The citation elements behind the scenes, the machine actionable citation elements are really the critical pieces. What it looks to human readable is very nice, but not what gets you automated attribution. It's what's happening behind the scenes. So and we're including because the CCO, or soon to be called something new, I can't wait to change my words again. Um, uh, uh, because the CCO is um, uh, something that's persistent through DataCite, we are firmly stating that any digital object or brittle link to a digital object can be used. So, for instance, journals are they're very good with DOIs. They are not good with other persistent identifiers in references in the reference section, and that's just where they are. Moving that is going to take more than my lifetime, pretty sure. So why don't we tuck in all the persistent identifiers that we're all working on national PID strategies and just put them in the CCO where they will live in DataCite. And the moment, if you do that, then you're ducking underneath the restrictions of your publisher, including all of the links that you need. And then they're recognized on the other side at the level we're ready to recognize them. And then you can roll back if you want to once new linkages or new recognition is in place. And that all has been persistently held. And you can create links that you maybe couldn't create before. Some of the ones that I'm worried about, Linda, you brought this up into my mind, is the software heritage IDs. They're not yet built into yeah, there you go. They're not yet built into how journals, they don't resolve with journals. But we know they can resolve as long as they're using that you can get them through the journal process. So this is an opportunity. And I really do think it will be uh, uh, a real, I think we're going to be able to push the concept of credit that you are the manager of a repository. Therefore, you can now actually see the machine actionable links for all technical papers and peer-reviewed publication because you're highlighting the use of not only data citation within the reference section, but also for any journal that might have some trouble with data citations, you can use a CCO and it'll get through and the linkages will happen and you'll have automated credit on the other side. So I need to talk to the OpenAlex folks. I will talk to them. We haven't had a conversation with OpenAlex just yet, Linda. So yes, we should just check in with them, make sure we're all in alignment. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I can't put my hand off for some reason here as I share. I want to make one comment on the persistency. We discuss persistency as if we have a persistent identifier, the whole thing is persistent, but it is not, because the objects behind the PIDs need to be persistent. the PID URLs need to be maintained on the long term. And what we have seen is that this is not everywhere the case. So we should not forget those who are really providing the foundation, who are the repositories, or even some pieces of infrastructure. So if we think of our climate data, we have an infrastructure which is not credited. So sometimes you see it in the acknowledgement, thanks to the Earth System Grid. Sometimes it's the acknowledgement for the data, so the Earth System Grid is the data. But these are sometimes forgotten and they are not sustainably funded. So we should not forget the pieces that we need to make that happen. It's just a plead. We can't solve that problem, but just to say this is also really important to solve. But I think we got a bit sidetracked. Maybe we could get a bit back to the presentation and bring it to the end. Shelley or James?
Next slide, please. Off we go. Is this back over to you, Martina?
We are with the
Any of
closing
us.
remarks. The poll. Let me try
Oh, yes.
to.
Oh, gosh. We have had such trouble trying to figure out what our new name should be. I'm so happy we're doing a poll.
Let's zoom. Let's see if I can get that any.
I think it's back to the polls list there, just below.
Yeah.
18 responses. Okay.
It would be nice if I could make it any larger. But this is just a sharing button. I don't know how well you can see it.
Try the share poll results at the bottom there. See if that'll do.
It seems to be to link it somewhere, to LinkedIn or wherever. Okay, that's not a button.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, there you go.
Download. Download is good. I hope you can see it now.
It looks like it's by order of the four most highest there. So
Yeah.
Rico's winning, but not by much. Trace is coming right behind. And then Mosaic and Marco. Yeah. RCO. I'm kind of good with RCO. Rico. We should probably decide how we're going to pronounce it. Oh, Allison hasn't voted. Oh my goodness, Allison. Tell us which of these four do you like?
Trace. Trace for me.
Trace?
Yep.
Citation.
So neck and neck.
Yeah, I think you just did it. I think you pushed it up. So Rico or Trace?
Alison, I think if you go into Hoover and you go onto the session in Hoover, so don't go join the stream. There's a
Yeah, that's
button
what I
for
was
polls.
trying.
Yeah.
There we are. Back. Okay, thank you.
6 for Trace.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna make it go up. So
Oh,
we're gonna
no.
have to either flip a coin or.
Polls. Okay.
So Trace is really Rico almost with the word transparent in front of it, and that is a great word.
There, it's coming in.
Oh, somebody doubled down on Rico. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Very good.
Well, that did it. It's 3 letters, research citation object.
Okay, 25
We can,
answers, so it's still a bit
yeah.
changing, but it's good that we have so
How many
many
of you are
votes.
there? Oh, there's only 26 on the call. I didn't vote.
And I didn't vote.
I didn't vote.
You did, James?
No, I didn't.
You didn't either?
No.
I think we had 4 before the session started, at least. That's why I couldn't change it any on Monday or something. So there were already some in.
Oh, Rico just went up again. Or did it? Or did somebody change their vote? Mm. So Allison, we could just talk about it as being transparent as a dimension. So we can always keep that word in there, but it just won't be in the acronym.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just so you know, I love that. I think transparency is really important. Credit's going to be really
Yeah.
Oops.
um,
I just do it again.
research
Ah,
citation object.
a third.
There we are. There's the answer. Research citation object. Quick, change all the slides.
Uh,
All
yeah.
right. Oh,
I don't
Kira,
know.
did you figure out how to vote? It's in the Whova app. That's where you have to go, is to the Whova app. Oh, you got there. Okay. All right. So that's how the numbers changed. All right. Thank you.
So, now Uwe is going. It's yeah, okay. I don't know who wants to finish it up. Maybe I can do the finish up. So, the technical task team is heading at adding use cases. So we are always keen on getting some additional use cases. We have the spreadsheet. I think it's linked somewhere uh, on the slides. So please add your use case if you have one. I've seen in the chat that there was a discussion around software. So please give us a bit more information. It's just 5 minutes or less that you will briefly describe how you envision to use CCOs. Secondly, we are working still on the finalization of the first version of the metadata schema. So please be a bit patient, and then if we reach out to you, we really need your feedback. And we are also searching for contributors to the tool development. So as said, there will be a bit forth and back, so maybe not the metadata standard finalized, but if there are volunteers who would like to contribute to these tool developments, there's also a link to the generator on the slide. So there was in the second hackathon someone putting up the framework of a generator tool. So it's just starting, but there is where we also are seeking contributions. I don't know, James, if you want to speak to what implementation adaptation are up to.
Yeah, implementation. The document we're gonna be finalizing as it goes into the adoption. So then getting the indexes and journals as we look to get pilots. And yeah, and feedback from the metadata as that evolves and matures into a version 1 and beyond. So yeah, implementation is winding up as we go into finding some people to adopt. So please, if you think you can contribute, please join us. If you can't make the 30th, every 2 weeks, and bring your use cases, skills, or examples, and or knowledge, or your in natural intrigue and
Yeah, Shelley, any words from your side? I
I'm
think
not.
we are quite good in time at the moment, or
We are. I'm typing to Maria and um Maria, so you would want a persistent identifier for your repository, and there are different camps on exactly what that would be. So for instance, your recommendation for a DOI, I think the RE3 data folks actually are doing that as well. So check out, just double check that you're not already listed in RE3 data to make sure so you don't have a duplicate DOI, for instance. Um, uh, Additionally, ROR is an organizational identifier. Repositories can and should have those. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of the other. Um, there's not enough common thought on the best possible persistent identifier for a repository. So I would not get rid of the other. It's just your opportunity of where to use it. The RICO research. Oh God, I've already forgotten what the letters are. Oh God, don't kill me. The RICO is you would use that if somebody were citing data in your repository. So let's say you had 5 data sets, a different repository had 5 data sets, and so on. One of your researchers would create a RICO, cite the data in your repository, and then you would give them directions on your website. Please also cite the repository. And then they would include in their RICO your ROR and the relationship. So that's one way. Some of you are saying, oh, Shelley, don't do that because the ROR should also be linked in the metadata to the data set on Maria's repository. Yes, but that's not yet reliable for credit. So I think, as my grandchildren come to be, that we could say, no, you don't need to cite the ROR in the RICO. Boy, does that sound good. You don't need to cite the ROR in the RICO. I think that's the first time that's ever been said in the world. Wow. And it's being recorded. That's cool. Okay, I think I've explained to you that we don't have enough community standards for how to make sure repositories get credit. So everything right now, doing everything you can makes sense, and then we should be able to pull back once there's common methods. What slide the link for use cases is? Martina. Yes, we have a ROR already. Perfect. You would want to use that. Repository announcement. Yep. Yep. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, this is we're hoping this will make a big difference. It's going to be a while before we get a pilot that actually functions all the way through, but if we keep pushing the concept and everybody comes to the table to identify to acknowledge the fact that we have these challenges, that transparency and credit are really important, that we're not doing a good job yet, this will be helpful. Thanks, co-chairs. This has been fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you,
if
Shelley.
there are
Thank you,
no
Martina.
questions, yeah. Sorry, James.
I was saying thank you as well, but yeah, if there are any other questions, do reach out to us, or speak now.
And join the meetings. The meetings are on Mondays. Hop over to the implementation group for complex citation. We're still in RDA. We're still a complex citation implementation interest group. And I think we can announce our new name. I'm very excited. And we'd love to have you on our Monday meetings. Kira, I can add you to the invite. Yeah. If anybody wants to be added to the invite, just just say so here in the chat and I'll pop you in. I think
Yeah, Linda raised her hand, so please speak up. Linda, please.
Hi, I'm so excited. I can't stand still. I just joined Software Heritage in RDA in September, and this project is exactly what we'd like to move towards. So I'm very excited. I hope to contribute. So please add me to the list. At the same time, I didn't figure out exactly what you're doing exactly, so I do need to kind of take a deep dive to understand what you're doing, etc.
Yeah, maybe we should also consider to have a kind of onboarding meeting of our interest group in between that we announce that for newcomers. Maybe that's something we should schedule at some point so that we just step back and say, well, we have now a session where we include new people and get them up to speed. Because otherwise, it's really working meetings where we continue the conversation from before, and it's a bit difficult to get up to speed. Or we organize one in between for newcomers.
That
I'm
might be
looking to
good.
the co-chairs.
Yeah, no, that might be good. I think we could definitely, if there's an interest for that, then please let us know. Could definitely arrange that. I say could but
Linda, can you pop your email in for me so I can add it into the invite?
And I see that Uwe is back with our meeting, so please, Uwe. No, he's gone.
me to do that.
Oh, so Shelley, you wanted to ask me something or not? Because I shouldn't have
I
called
think it
you
was
out.
Oh,
I think it was me and
so
you were on the phone. You had your hand up and then you put it down, so
Ah,
just
yeah,
checking you
yeah,
didn't have
yeah,
anything.
yeah, and then I was on the phone. Okay.
no, I'm sorry, Uwe.
That's okay.
My I was RDA's prior session was at 3 a.m. for me, and so
Okay.
I'm easily distracted by people moving, and that's what was happening. I'm like, what is happening?
Okay, yeah, it's all fine.
No, it was me.
No, I was just a question if you wanted to, but I don't know what I wanted to ask at that point. I think I was a follow-up to James, but it's already done. Okay.
Yeah, I think at some point we wanted to ask you from Pangea if you want to become a pilot repository, a CCO publisher or something.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the problem is we don't want to publish the CCOs on our own. We want other people just include our data sets in their own CCOs. So because we are currently already creating those collection data sets, which are also kind of CCOs, but they have they are a little bit different because they're really bundles of stuff in on one repository. So we don't want to have that. We don't want to create the CCOs under the behave of Pangea somehow, because that's more the person who wants to cite many data sets should have a possibility either through their publisher or by a separate institution. So I think on the last on the last RDA in Australia, we were discussing about having something like a separate repository that can create CCOs, where the people can do it in a self-based
yes,
way, like on Zenodo. So click
yes.
on 100 data sets, you search via data site search or whatever, add them to a CCO, create a DOI, and done. Something like that. That was my idea.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I agree that you have to separate it from Pangea
Yeah,
because Pangea
yeah,
is really a repository for data, and
yeah,
this
exactly.
CCO is something which is a technical, I would say, thing, which
Yeah,
a general repository can do as well. So you need to be clear that this is a different thing. So you
yeah.
don't have a capacity to go on with
No,
that at the moment.
unfortunately, at the moment, not really, because we are a little bit busy with data rescue and so on at the moment. You know, Shelley.
Yes, Uwe, I do. Please continue rescuing data.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So,
Um,
yeah.
it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, it was
So,
just to get
Yeah.
back to what you
Yeah.
offered in IDW, but it's totally
Yeah,
fine if you
I
say
think
it's
something like really something like a simple Zenodo for creating CCOs would really be cool.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
something we want to do to
Mm.
reach out to the
Yeah.
Zenodo.
Yeah.
There are other general repositories which we might reach out to, but
Mm.
in Europe and with the contacts we
Mm.
have, Zenodo is the easiest, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And Martina, next week you're going to have a chance to talk to them. So,
Ah, are they invited? Okay, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah, let's do
From
that.
our side, Frank Oliver is coming.
Yes, yes. And Panjay will be there too. So,
Yeah.
although CCO is not going to be the top of the list.
No, CCO is not
No,
I think. Yeah.
it'll,
Okay.
but it will be good. It will be good to have a quick chat with folks. Thank you all for,
Yeah, at least in the breaks.
yeah.
At least, yeah.
If this is interesting to you and you have in you want to consider joining the adoption group, we'd love it's a good time to come in. We could
Mm.
use and should use March 30th as a reorientation on everything. So we could do that, Martina and James. I think that would make a lot of sense to say, okay,
Mm.
this is what this is all about. And uh uh adoption, it includes getting more use cases, getting more people interested. That helps us leverage the research ecosystem infrastructure in order to encourage participation, demonstrate that there are multiple disciplines that um, uh, Maria. Okay, yes, Maria, I'll add you as well. Multiple disciplines that are wanting to have this. Great, thanks, Kira. Um, wanting
Thanks.
for this to be possible. So it really helps. So feel free to invite anyone that is part of your organization to nominate. And thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of RDA.